Welcome to the second part of our introduction in the subject of abnormal psychology. In the second part, we'll start off with this question. How many and what sort of people have diagnosable psychological disorders today? And the answer to that, it's according to data, there is most likely 13 to 15% of the world population nga na ay diagnosed psychological disorders. But it's not actually answering the question which gives us enlightenment on this topic, but rather the question itself. Why is this question important? And the answer to that is twofold. First, such information or question is essential when planning and establishing mental health services. It's like getting to know the people that you will be working on, or getting to know the environment where you will be working on as a mental health frontliner. No? Also, mental health planners require a precise understanding of the nature and extent of psychological difficulties within a given area, state, or country, because they are responsible for determining how resources, such as funding of research projects or services provided by community mental health centers, may be most effectively allocated. This means that as a as a person providing the frontline services for mental health patients, you should know, no, the nature of your work, the difficulties that lies ahead, the challenges. Parts of challenges would be ang community. For an example for that would be educating the community towards towards letting go of the stigma that is associated with psychological disorders. Pwede, di ba? So that's the idea with psychological difficulties, because these difficulties might come in not in the form of the political or the organizational, but it might come in the form sa community ng problem mismo. Uh, we have we have discussed this before that in many rural areas, if na sila'y relative nga schizophrenic, mostly schizophrenia man gyud sa Philippines, mostly, no, and then they cannot control the behavior of such person. Ilang ginabuhat is prison nila within sa balay, or to some extreme cases ginabuhatan nila tangkal, murag prisuhan sa likod sa balay, and they chain the person there, and then pakanon lang nila, di na nila paliguan, no, so those are some of the difficulties that one might face in butantain when you work as a mental health na frontliner. So that, no, other nga mga biases pud sa community could also be a form of difficulty. And again, we have the organizational na mga problems, such as budgets, unsa pa, political nga mga reasons, political motivations, daghan kayo. So it's good to know these things it's good to know the environment where you will be working on so that you will be more adept and ready to face these challenges. No? And ideally, you won't be the one nga mo musabay na lang sa flow of whatever it is nga ilahang gina-practice. Okay, so na discuss na nato ang resources, no, research project. Importante ang research, no. You might say on your field na di man importante, but actually it's very important in any field, in any discipline, or in any organization. Importante ang research because how would you know the needs? How would you assess a certain problem? How would you assess a certain community in the context of one area or one issue? Of course, you need what? You need research. You need to know. You need consensus. You need surveys and so on and so forth. Okay. So you will know how you will handle these things. So that's the first thing, no. The question is actually important because it sheds light on the whole environment, especially on the mental health services. Second, estimates of the frequency of mental disorders in different groups of people may provide valuable clues as to the cause of these disorders. You should also know kinsa imuhang mga kliyente. This is very important because it might actually kanisha is it might be a product of research, di ba? But it might shed clues on the causes of psychological disorders that nga gaabot sa imuhang facility or organization. So kana. For example, by data, kasagaran sa schizophrenic would be lalaki. You could answer this question, ngano ka, nganong lalaki man? Why? Kasagaran sa mga substance abuse ng mga disorders, lalaki, ngano man. So we have so many things nga ma-infer from those data, but it pays to know, di ba? The frequency and the categories of those people that you will be working on. Next would be the history of psychopathology. This is a very interesting butanta portion sa atong discussion because at some point it sheds light the on the nature of human beings and how we evolved from uncivilized nga way of dealing with each other towards humanely valuing other people, no. So from uncivilized to humanitarian or humanistic. Anyway, it is important to consider how concepts and approaches have changed or not over time because we can learn not to make the same mistakes made in the past and because we can see that our current concepts and approaches are likely to change in the future. As we consider the history of psychopathology, we will see that many new approaches to the treatment of mental illness throughout time appear to go well at first and are heralded with much excitement and fanfare. So there was a time in the history of Putanta of the evolution of treating mental disorders that there are there are ways and methods which are thought of as very effective but then later on was found out to be a pseudoscientific method in approaching this or butanta being a treatment ani nga mga sakit. So, first is early demonology, from the word demons, yes. Before the age of scientific inquiry, all good and bad manifestations of power beyond human control, no, eclipse, earthquakes, storms, fires, diseases, and the changing seasons were regarded as supernatural. No, if many of you na-under na ako sa gender and society, some of you or almost all of you are enrolled in my gender and society class. One thing that was discussed there was si August Comte, right? And according to August Comte, there are three levels of mindset nga naa sa tao across time. No? Three levels of mindset. First dira is the supernatural, second is metaphysical, the third is scientific. The first part is muna siya sa early demonology. According kang Comte is that at the first stage of our butanta, our mindset as a group of people, we tend to attribute things nga that is out of our control, we attribute it to supernatural nga mga factors such as kung gabagyo nasuko si Zeus, kung nihubag imong tiil, nakatunog ka og the windy, no, kung gihilantan ka kay nakasangkil kag yawa-yawa sa kilid, no, there are so many other butanta factors nga pwede na to mahimuag rason for the things that wala ta kabalo gyud per se unsay reason. So muning tawag na supernatural causes, no. And according to Comte, this is pinaka-early nga butanta mindset sa tao. The second would be metaphysical. Sa metaphysical, the reasons that we have for things, nanatay ideas but not really concrete. Such as, for example, if ang tao yung tiil, if ang isa ka tao gihilantan, for example. So, di na ka, sa metaphysical stage, you don't say nga, nayawa ni siya, or nakatunog og daw hindi. No. Sa metaphysical stage, you would be saying, there's something that's causing this person to be sick. No? So that's the metaphysical. You have an idea that there's this thing nga naka-cause, no, or rather a factor of a certain phenomena, but wala pa kay concrete nga evidence. And then thirdly would be the scientific, wherein you have the complete evidence of what's going on and what's happening. Okay? If tanaw ninyo ang definition or rather ang description na to sa early demonology, makita na to nga this is a very very early in terms sa human nga societies, no, in terms of its development as a community and a society. And so ang prevalent ng mindset ani nga time would be on, yes, you guess it right, supernatural, no. So behavior seemingly outside individual control was also ascribed to supernatural causes, no. And so in this stage, people would say if this person is acting in a rather irrational way, then naay supernatural nga causes nga gapalayo ana. For example would be the person might be possessed, or the person might be possessed by a god, possessed by a demon, possessed by a spirit, possessed by a sprite, or anything at all that might cause him or her to act irrationally. No? So that's the early demonology. No? The doctrine that an evil being or a spirit can dwell within a person and control his or her mind is called demonology. No? The word demon, it's not actually demonio per se, but the word demon is from the Greek word daimon, and daimon means spirits. Okay, so these are spirits in the supernatural nga realm daw nga control sa human mind and body. So examples of demonological thinking are found in the records of early Chinese, Egyptians, Babylonians, and Greeks. Among the Hebrews gyapon apil, odd behavior was attributed to possession of the person by bad spirit. Isa sa pinaka famous ani nga event was, it's even in the Bible, both in the Bible and the Quran, wherein katong gi-drive out ang mga demons out sa isa ka possessed nga person towards the swine, no? So di na to adtuan, di na to lalisan ang veracity of these texts because they are both of these texts are regarded as sacred in their own right in the theological nga kuan, but for the sake of discussion, isa to siya sa butang tagi explain nga early evidences of butanta the mindset of people to attribute something sa demons rather than sa person. The belief that odd behavior was caused by possession led to treating it by exorcism, exercise, no? And I don't think na nakulang tag example sa exorcism, right? Most of you hilig kay mo og mga horror films and movies. I don't think you're new to this, but that's the idea of exorcism, ritualistic casting out of evil spirits. Exorcism typically took the form of elaborate rites of prayer, noise making, forcing the afflicted to drink terrible tasting brews, and on occasion more extreme measures such as flogging, ginawhip or ginahapak, and starvation, ginapagutom, to render the body uninhabitable to devils. No. I'm not saying that this is not true. I'm just saying but that on some cases it might be the cause of mental disorders. No, but I'm not saying totally no it's too butanta it's too it's too audacious to say that such things are not true, right? Because there are things nga di gid na to ma-explain, and it's also it's even part of Filipino psychology, right? There are really things that we cannot explain. There are really things that are scientific, no matter unsa na ka scientific ang kalibutan ni evolve into. There are really things nga a small part of our existence wherein di gid nato ma-explain fully ang isa ka phenomenon. And so we cannot just say nga just because we're scientific na karon, we cannot just say nga exorcism or such events is not true, right? And we can't just say all in all it's false or it's, di ba? Anyway, early biological explanations. So, in early biological explanations, ang pinaka known ani would be si Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine. And why is that? Because he separated those things, the superstition, magic, and even some potent semblance of religion, iyang separate away from the science of medicine. He rejected the prevailing Greek belief that the gods sent mental disturbances as punishment and insisted that such illness had natural causes and hence should be treated like other common maladies such as cold and constipation. And so, kaning mga sakit, he believed as early as 460 BC, right? He believed that these phenomenons are not normal, but they are also not supernatural. They have their own causes, and they should be treated as a real disease, no? So that Hippocrates regarded the brain as the organ of consciousness. Dira siya sakto, intellectual life, emotion. Thus, he thought that disordered thinking and behavior were indications of some kind of brain pathology, which is to some degree correct. No, nga naay problema sa brain. But the thing is, of course, he has no way of knowing. Wala pa siya apparatus, wala siya MRI, wala siya other means to measure things or to theorize and hypothesize things. No, and so what he believed was kung unsay observable and measurable, mura to iyang iubay. And in scientific thought, that's actually correct. And so, mo man yung nakitaan mo, yung na-observe, and so, iyahang conclusion was all of these things are a product of a pathology na ang iyahang center or root is nasa brain. No? Hippocrates is often considered one of the earliest proponents of the notion that something wrong with the brain disturbs the thought and action, which is in some form present sa ato ni Rene Descartes, right, on the system of dualism, the mind and the body. No, so this, according to Descartes, these two systems interact with each other, no, for the purposes of the butanta existence and survival of man. And so Hippocrates also theorized and hypothesized that whatever disturbs the brain actually has a very significant impact on the thought and action of a person. Hippocrates classified mental disorders into three categories: mania, melancholia, and anphrenitis. O kani, or brain fever. So kana. Further, Hippocrates believed that normal brain functioning and therefore mental health depend on delicate balance among the four humors or bodily fluids, tubig sa lawas, or rather fluid sa lawas, no? Namely blood, dugo, black bile, apdo, yellow bile, apdogyapon, and phlegm, which is phlegma. Now, out of these four bodily fluids, according to Hippocrates, is that all of this should be balanced, no? And according pa ni Hippocrates, that based on what is dominant sa imong lawas, based out of these four, na ay personality types mo manifest sa tao. No? Blood would be sanguine, characterized by being warm, no? Black bile for melancholic, no? Yellow bile for so itong yellow bile, I forget the yellow bile, and phlegm, which is grabe ka sticky, which is phlegmatic, people who are sluggish. Sa yellow bile, I really forgot the term sa yellow bile, but it's characterized by somebody who is very temperamental sa puton, no? So si sanguine, warm and welcoming. Si black bile is melancholic, negative, pessimistic, no? Choleric ang yellow bile. Thank you kay Sako ang ever supportive nga tech support dire. Yellow bile is actually choleric, no? Mga tao nga sa puton, sipok og ulo, and competitive. No? Actually, opposite sila ni sanguine. No? And phlegmatic would be people who are slow. Mm. They are not basically negative or pessimistic, but slow sila. Slow ilahang presentation or ilang orientation sa kalibutan. So, ina na. Okay. If a person was sluggish or dull, for example, the body supposedly contained a preponderance of phlegma. No, preponderance of black bile was explanation for melancholia. No, too much yellow bile explained irritability and anxiousness. No, too much blood, changeable and temperament. For melancholia, for example, he prescribed tranquility, sobriety, and care in choosing food and drink and abstinence from sexual activity. One thing which makes Hippocrates unique is that one of the prescriptions that he gives sa mga tao are actually logical. No? These are actually logical things. No? Like for example, care in choosing food and drink. No? This is actually practiced karon in modern medicine. Di ba? Whatever your sickness is, nagi care in choosing food and drink. Di lang ka basta-basta. No? Dili pwede nga taas imong BP and then mo pakaon kag padayon kag kaon og unsa kining lechon or humba. No. So naagi care in choosing food and drink, and it's actually scientific that people who don't choose the right types of foods are actually uh, predisposing themselves up to dili man psychological disorders but naagi mood swings and anxiety. An example lang yun is coffee, right? Coffee makes you anxious. Coffee plus Coke makes you anxious. Coffee plus Coke plus chocolate, no? And so, no, it would make you very hyperactive or magpalpitate imong kasing-kasing. And one thing that you will notice from that is affected imong mood, no? So inana. He's actually right in many cases. No? Anyway, Dark Ages and Demonology. Dark Ages in Western European medicine and in the treatment and investigation of mental disorders. Gitawag siya Dark Ages because it's so dark intellectually. There was no enlightenment in terms of science and in terms of butanta theology or in terms of knowledge, body of knowledge. Wala. It's so dark in Western Europe at that time. And so nibalik ang demonology. No? It was attributed to the death of Galin man siguro that nibalik ang butanta demonology movement because the churches gained in influence, and what happened was all of the other agencies for education, for health, kay take up sa mga Christian yung mga missionaries. Now, they're not actually bad people. It's just that during that time, it's so dark intellectually and in form of knowledge, it's so dark, grabe ka bleak, grabe ka uhaw ang mga tao sa during the time, dark ages, mo ginatawag that there is there's no truth nga ga-abide sa kalibutan, and so people are just following orders around. So kana. So they replace physicians and mga frontliners on mental health disorders. During this period, there was a return to a belief in supernatural causes of mental disorders. And so that, no, tungod na nibalik ang ilahang supernatural belief. Anyway, sorry for that. Now we have the persecution of the witches. Muna siyang persecution. This is very interesting a persecution because if you are considered a witch during the time, butang ka nila og isa ka lever and then butang ka sa edge sa kahoy and lumsan ka. And what's unfair about this is if if malumos ka, Silve, if malumos ka, then dili ka possessed by an evil spirit, which is good, pero patay na ka, right? Now, the idea is, if dili ka malumos, then you are possessed by the devil. And so, lumsan ka kayo para mawala ang evil spirits. And so, that's the idea of their persecution. Now, beginning in the 13th century, in response to widespread social unrest, people in Europe turned to demonology to explain these disasters. Witchcraft, now viewed as instigated by Satan, was seen as heresy and a denial of God. So si Pope Innocent VIII, naghatag siya og verdict that no stone should be left unturned. Kaning mga witch, kaning mga bruha, tanan silang mga mangkukulam, apil na silang Mildred Hubble o silang Harry Potter siguro ani, no. All of them should die. No, so no stone left unturned. Tanan lugar adtoon, tanan balay adtoon, no, tanan witch pamatyon because no, so that no, but isa sa imong makitaan would be wala sila proof, wala sila burden of proof to say that kani siya witch, kani siya dili. But actually those are just opinions and haka-haka, chismis sa silingan and so on, right? If you will be caught nga and you will be accused nga witch ka, gamay ra kayo ang chances nga ma-acquit ka ana nga accusation. So, and with a memo ni Pope Innocent VIII, we have the two Dominican monks, no, who became inquisitors. They wrote a comprehensive manual sa pag-hunt sa witches, which is called Malleus Maleficarium. Malleus is the word for hammer, Maleficarium is witch, no. Diragikan ang maleficent, no. So they use this workbook, they use this manual to guide the witch hunt, no. With Malleus Maleficarium, the hunt for and so-called witches has become both legal and morally right. And so, if makapatay kag witch atong a time, it's actually a good thing because you're doing a service for the Lord, no. Even if walay basis imong pagsulti nga kani nga tawo is witch or kana is not, because it's legal and it's morally right, and so you're justified under the sight of the king and under the sight of the pope. You're justified in killing another person or persecuting another person, which is actually a crime against humanity, no. Those accused of witchcraft should be tortured if they did not confess, no. So, those convicted and penitent were to be imprisoned for life. So wala gyapon kay takas. And those convicted and repentant were to be handed over to the law for execution. Kasagaran nila is ginasunog. An example, Joan of Arc, di ba? She was a symbol of feminine strength during the dark ages. But because of her butanta success in war and strategy, she was accused of being a witch. But wala siya defense on herself. How could you defend an accusation nga ikaw witch? The more ka mo defend sa kugulingon, the more ka guilty. And if wala po kay istorya, guilty ra gyapon ka. And so it's actually between the devil and the deep blue sea. And so si Joan of Arc, no, was burned at the stake. No, so that's a very bleak nga example. Napa si Jack de Molay, no, Jack Demolay. Si Jack is the last nga leader sa Knights Templar, and so it was political actually. Naiutang ang King of France sa Knights Templar. Dako kayang utang si King Philip, dako kayang utang sa Knights Templar, di na niya mabayaran. And so iyang gi-accuse ang Knights Templar nga devil worshippers, and so gisunog ang ilahang leader nga si Jack Demolay. So ipakita nimo sa trend sa story, walay takas, no? Walay excuses. Manuals specify that a person's sudden loss of reason was a symptom of demonic possession, and that burning was the usual method of driving out the supposed demon. No? It also butanta bring forth the Lunacy Trials, mga people who are lunatic. Sa 13th century, people who are lunatics, no, wherein pagawasay na ni siya sa dark period, dark ages, no. But the thing with the Lunacy Trials is that dili sila pamatyon, but ibutang sila og estate wherein dito sila i-keep tanan mga people who are lunatics. Tawag sila lunatics because from the word luna, which is moon, and so they thought that full moon makes the person crazy or makes the person do irrational things. But then again, even today, even karon, no, natay term sa Bisaya nga bulanon, no, people who show anxiety or mood swings during full moon, but it's not actually scientific. Wala siya scientific nga basis, no? Because how could you say nga ang moon maka-affect sa behavior sa tao? And if such, mura ra taog hayop if tinuod man. No? Anyway, development of asylums sa Bethlehem, no? Prior to the Priory of St. Mary of Bethlehem was founded in 1243. Records indicate that in 1403, it housed 6 men with mental illness. No? So deplorable ang conditions. Bethlehem eventually became one of London's great tourist attractions. So what happened with Bethlehem is asylum siya, but the thing with it is people are actually buying tickets na himo siya tourist attraction. People are buying tickets just to see these people with mental illnesses. Similarly, in the Lunatics Tower, which was constructed in Vienna, Austria, 1784, patients were confined in spaces between inner square rooms and outer walls where they could be viewed by passerby. So, mura kag nakalabay sa zoo. So, that. We have Pinel's reform, no? Philippe Pinel, at the height of the French Revolution, no? So siya mo'y nahimong symbol sa butanta pag-liberate sa mga people in asylum, no? And, it was actually reported that Pinel removed the chains of the people imprisoned in La Bessitre, no? Anyway, an event that was memorialized in well-known paintings. But according sa historical research, it was not it was not Philippe Pinel who freed those people, but it was actually Jean-Baptiste Poussin who became an orderly at the hospital. So si Poussin ang release sa mga patients, dili si Pinel. But maybe because historically si Pinel na siya mas dako iyang status sa society, that's why mas emphasized ang iyang pangalan written in the history books. Okay, so and we have the moral treatment, no? wherein people na it started in Europe, in some parts of Europe and United States. No, nanatay humanitarian changes wherein people are actually treated kindly. People with mental illnesses are actually treated nicely. Na sila'y personal nurse, and then people who take care of them, who talks to them, who reads to them, encourage purposeful activity, and so on and so forth. And so that ends our second part, but we still have a third part coming. But anyway, thank you so much for listening.